welcome. My speech today will be in English, so I'm trying to go as slowly as I can. We're going to talk about culture and your role as a leader and how you can build a winning culture for your organization. Now, your organization might be a company, it might be a small business, it might be other. And really, the culture that you organization can lead to it either doing very well successfully or not doing very well at all. Now, many of the things that I'm going to share with you today are very practical. They're very practical. They're not about theories. And the second thing is, they're not all my ideas. What I've done is I've taken the ideas of some very great, intelligent people and tried to adapt them to a school situation or to a small business association. You can now build, you can make your school far more adaptable, far more happy place to live. So let's get on with it straight away. What is a finite game and what is an infinite game or infinite game? Infinite. Now, a finite game, according to game theory, now a lot of business people use game theory. A finite game is actually a game where you have fixed players, fixed rules, and common objectives. So that is a definition in game theory because I teach game theory at the university. And one of the things we always try to explain to our students is what's a finite game. Because the strategy for winning a finite game is different from the strategy of trying to win an infinite game. So they call for different strategies. So first, let's explain and understand what is a finite game. Football is a finite game because you've got a fixed number of players, you have teams, you have very fixed rules and a common objective. So you say at the end of 90 minutes, the first team to score more goals is the winner. Badminton is a finite game. The first person or the first team of two people who wins 21 points wins a match or 3 matches. The point is that they are very fixed rules when we're talking about finite games. And the objective is always to win at every single service or to win at every single minute of the game. Now, the question is, are we really taking all of these and are they relevant to our present day situations? Is playing the finite game the correct strategy? The problem is that in today's world, we live in a time of VUCA, and lots of people are not clear about what VUCA is. It might be a new thing for you to understand. So let me go through very quickly on this slide what a VUCA, a time of VUCA is. It's a time of volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. Volatile in the sense that things happen so fast. Think about, for example, when we had our pandemic. Within 30 days, every school had stopped. Don't come to school. Parents were left. What do I do with my children? Volatile, very fast changing. And it's not just because of technology, but things change really fast. Think about it if you are a Ukrainian. One day you're watching TV in your apartment, enjoying. Tomorrow, Russia invades your country. Volatility. Then you have uncertainty. Uncertainty because people kept asking us, when is the pandemic going to end? When are we going to go back to school? When are we going to go back to normal school? The correct answer is, I don't know. Uncertainty. In today's environment, if you change one thing, a lot of things are affected. Let me give you an example. If I tell my school principal A, school principal may be very happy, but the teachers may not be happy. The parents may not be happy because everything is so complex now. Decisions that we make for one stakeholder affects the other stakeholders in ways that we cannot even imagine. And then you have a problem of ambiguity. We're not clear when something happens. Is this right or wrong? Is this good or bad? And because of all of these factors, volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity, People just don't know what. So I'm asking you again, are we playing a finite game? And the answer is no. If you are doing business in 2023, if you are playing only the finite game, you are going to be in a lot of trouble, because the reality, the real world, is that we live and play an infinite game. There are no fixed players. Your competitors change all the time. There are no rules, because the rules are changing all the time, and you really have no set goals. Because if you, for example, want to say, I want to be the most profitable online travel agent in Indonesia, what does that mean actually? It doesn't mean anything. It just means that at that point of time, you are the most successful at what you do. But it doesn't ensure that tomorrow you will still be the best. One thing that is clear, the one thing that is clear is that we can never really win in business. And the only true competitor is yourself. The only true competitor is really yourself. The goal of the infinite player, if you're playing an infinity game, is to simply be better than yourself all the time. So you don't, the first mindset change that you should have as a leader is not that you want to win the competition, but that you want to be better every single day as a process. Everything you do must be to better your organization, better your people, better and sharpen the way in which you do things, because we all know from experience that actually you need to be better than yourself all the time. And as leaders, there are 5 elements of culture. Now, culture is simply one of the different things that we control. We use our culture to breed, to nurture 5 very specific elements of culture in our businesses and in our schools. And now I'm going to take you to each and every one and explain to you very clearly what I mean by these different elements. Now, the first element is called a just cause. A just cause. And what does a just cause mean? It means the reason why your organization is doing something. And this reason for doing something must speak to all of your employees, the way in which they do the work, the way in which they treat their customers. The most famous example, of course, would be Steve Jobs and Apple. People spend money to buy Apple computers, and they spend a lot of money to buy it. Why? It's not that Apple builds better computers than anyone else. It's simply because when you buy an Apple, you feel you're part of a revolution. You're part of the in. You're part of a group of people who have a different way of thinking. You're part of an elite group. And Steve Jobs is very good at making his edit and speaking about what he called the just cause. Now, what does it mean for us in schools? Now, a lot of times we think, okay, we have these ideas that we want to be revolutionary or we want to contribute to education. Now, my question for you as school leaders or as business leaders, is that something that would attract the best talents in your pool to come to you, to work with you, to get and achieve that just cause? If it's just, oh, we want to make the organization richer, we want to educate Indonesian students. Nice to hear, but it doesn't really move you. Because what you want is a just cause, not just a reason. Bukan cuman an alasan for doing what you do, but you want an alasan that is so strong that all of the people working in your organization will say, I really like working here. I work here because I feel that I'm doing something for the greater good. I'm doing something for education that other people don't do. I'm providing a service that no one else does. I'm providing a product that is so going to revolutionize and help my fellow human beings, that people just will want to have it. And you start thinking about this just cause. One thing that you find is that more and more people will be attracted to you in terms of your human resources, because they're going to come and say, I want to be associated with this company or this school or this business is such a fantastic aim and goal that I want to be involved in this company or this business or this school. So find your just cause. As a leader, sit down, think about what is your just cause. It's not VC and VC. That's old school. Now people need more than that. This new generation of teachers, this new generation of workers, they're not interested in the usual to build a profitable company for another. They're not interested. It must be a cause so just that people will say, I don't care that your company pays me less. I want to work in your company because I feel that what we're doing is for a greater good. Think about it. A lot of people think, oh, I'm going to pay more money and people will come and work for me. I can give high salaries and keep them. That's old school. That is where you're not playing the infinity game. You're playing the finite game. I'm going to pay more. And then the next time another school or another organization offers 500,000 more, the teacher says, bye-bye, I'm going. I'm leaving you and going to work in another school, because they're paying you more. Now, when you see that happening, it's because you haven't given these workers, these people, a reason to want to come to work, right? So the first thing you want to do is to have that just cause. And also remember, not only are you giving everyone a good reason to come to work each day, but it must be something that they love to do. Right? So that's a just cause. Let's move to the second thing. And the second thing, or the second element of culture that you want to build, is to build a trusting team. Now, this is very challenging in Indonesia because on one hand, many employers that I have seen don't trust their subordinates. And many of the subordinates don't trust their bosses. They feel that the bosses are just out to squeeze money, squeeze time from them, are very petty. And bosses feel that their workers simply want to take advantage of them all the time. They're lazy. We want to get something out of them. So let me tell you a story about people that I've met. One of the organizations I worked at was an English language school. And in this English language school, it was one of the biggest in Bandung. It was famous in Bandung and famous in Indonesia. It isn't anymore. It's died. This whole business has collapsed. But 15 years ago, it set the industry standard and was a very well-paying organization. And I knew that my colleagues in this organization, we had a lot of freedom, because the bosses, we felt, trusted us. They never micromanaged. They allowed us to do what we wanted to do within the confines of very clear parameters. Now, one of the teachers in the school also taught at another English school. And this particular teacher, she was telling me that her salary in the other school was 32,000 rupiah an hour. And every day they had to show lesson plans. And the manager would come and look at their lesson plans and complain. And why did you do this? Why didn't you do that? You should do this. You can only do this. You cannot change anything. And very clearly, there was a lack of trust between the school and the teachers. Whereas this same person, in the context of where I was working, we had a whole sense of trust. And this trust allowed every single teacher to flourish. It is really a beautiful thing to see. When you set the parameters, you have very, very strong individuals and you say, This is what I'd like to achieve. Now go ahead. What do you think we should do? And leave your teams that we trust to do the things that needs to be done. And I guarantee you, ladies and gentlemen, ultimately, what you will get is a far better product than if you micromanage. So have and build trust within your teams. I started this part of the presentation saying that it is very difficult in Indonesia. And I am aware that indeed there are difficulties within Indonesia because we come from a culture of top-down management. And it's very challenging sometimes for us to simply lepas tangan and allow our subordinates to, for fear that they will actually take advantage of the situation. Okay? So build a trusting team, because what we know, when you build a trusting team, your job is to create an environment where each worker produces his or her best. I'll say that again before I move to the next point. What is your job? Your job is not to rule over your subordinates. Your job is not to micromanage. Your job is to provide that environment where each worker, whether it's a teacher, whether it's your accounts girls, whether your FO, whatever it is, your marketing personnel, where each worker produces his best. And I always like to remind managers, our job is to set up our subordinates to succeed. What does that mean? That means when I give a task to my subordinate, not only must I be clear in what I want at the end of the day, I must also give them the resources, whether it's time, management, effort, training, money, flexibility. It could be a whole list of things. But I've got to give my subordinates enough of resources to succeed in what I want them to achieve. And far too many of us, we give instructions and then we don't care or we don't think about giving that resources to them to succeed. Think about it the next time you ask somebody down your line to do something. Make sure you give them that resource. So it's all about having a culture where we create the environment for success. We're not here to manage you. You know, a lot of people, for example, say, oh, how do I get the maximum from each of my teachers or each of my workers? That, I think, is the wrong way. They're not slaves. People are very intelligent nowadays. They know when they're being taken advantage of. And that's not the kind of culture that you want. So build that successful environment where each worker can produce the best output. Let's go to number 3. And number 3 is all about having a worthy rival. And this is not about competition. It's not about choosing who your competitor is. It is about having a worthy rival. So let me tell you a story of my experience in Toastmasters. I first became a Toastmaster in 2005. And there is this one Toastmaster that I really disliked. I really disliked him. He was never mean to me or anything like that. But I'll tell you why I disliked him. I disliked him because he could do what I did. And not only that, he was more committed to me than me. And I kept seeing him go to 10 different Toastmasters meetings when I would go to only one. And every time I got this WhatsApp message that he'd won another competition, I'd get jealous and angry. I mean, he didn't do anything bad to me. I just felt, this guy is like just grating on me. And subsequently, I mean, it's been since 2005. I mean, I've known him for nearly 18, 19 years. But, one day we were sitting around having coffee. And in fact, I just spoke to him today and I said I was going to give this talk and he was my biggest rival. And he said to me, yeah, you're my biggest rival as well. I don't like you too. Because every time I see you, Hary, you speak so eloquently and so freely. And I have to struggle for all my words. So each of us are looking at each other and we are feeling this is a reflection of what I should be doing. He is doing what I want to be able to do. Now, that is where we are talking now about having a worthy rival, not a competitor, a rival. A competitor is a game, finite game idea, having a competitor. But a rival is something different. Now, I'm going to contrast this with some other conversation that I had with another school leader. I think some in the audience, I've related the story before and you're probably chuckling to yourself. I was at a conference of school leaders in Indonesia, and this very, how would I say it, this very confident director, he was the director or he was the head of the Yayasan or one of the Yayasan of a rather big, very famous chain of schools in Bandung and Jakarta. And he came up to me and said, "Oh, Hary, how's my competition? You're my competitor." And he told everybody around the table, "Oh, they are our competitors in Bandung." And it struck me that he saw this as a finite game, that he's really thinking about Temasek as his competitor. And he's spending so much of time and effort trying to beat us. Now the point is, if you had like us at Temasek an infinite idea of the game, we don't care. We don't care that some schools have better facilities, or that this school has a swimming pool, or that this school has those gadgets in class. We don't care. What we care about at Temasek is that every single day we get better at what we do. By contrast, this other yayasan is trying to beat us at everything. Every time we do something, they want to do something, to the point that nowadays nearly half of his teachers in one of his schools are actually ex-Temasek teachers. Okay, he's hired all of our teachers because we train our teachers so well. So they've moved to his school, and that's fine as long as we get better every single day. So have a worthy rival. At the end of the day, stop trying to compete on one metric. Oh, they have a swimming pool, we need to have a swimming. Oh, they have this, we need to have that. That is the way where you dilute your focus. This is how schools or business spend so much time trying simply to be better than one other competitor. What we should be doing is saying, looking inwards, looking at the rival and saying, what can I learn from my rival? Not should I build another swimming pool or should I buy another piece of equipment. It should be, let's look at them as a rival, not a competitor. What can we learn from our rivals? And once we have got this culture where you're looking at other teachers or other businesses or other corporations and saying, that's a worthy rival, they're doing this very well, how do I now try to beat them and get this better on my own team? How do I get my team to become better at what I see my rivals are doing? So at the end of the day, ladies and gentlemen, when we're talking about competition is really about winning. But rivalry, like me and my Toastmaster friend, we're really good friends now, I help him in all his competitions. When he's a competition, he'll call me and I would practice with him. He'd deliver his speeches. I got no time to take part in Toastmaster competitions, but he has. So I live through him. I'm kind of like, when he wins, I'm like, yay, real well done. I take it as a point for me as well. Rivalry, that's rivalry. And it's open rivalry. We tell each other, say, okay, you're the best at what you do. And I say the same thing to him. And both of us are getting better. And that's what rivalry is having. So as a leader, think about the worthy rival. Think about a school or an organization or a company that you say, they're doing well. How are they doing well? How can I learn from my Right. Let's move to number four. Now, number four is hard because the person who came up with these ideas really used a big word. And the word that he used is existential flexibility. So let me break it down for some of us. I couldn't understand what he meant at the beginning. I had to go and look at the dictionary and try to figure out what he meant by existential flexibility. Existential flexibility means reinvention of your business, reinvention of your school, or reinvention of the way, of the process, or what you actually do in your business or school. Temasek, again, I come back to a very simple example. Temasek, for example, is now going into modular system for secondary school. And briefly, you've heard this on LTI before by my colleague, Mr. Eric Bodiono. In Temasek, we're doing modular system for secondary school. What does this mean? Means students can choose any subject they want, decide on any exams they want to take, and decide on their own timetables. What would most people say? Temasek is crazy. It's madness. How can you let students do this? Why don't you just do what we've done for the last 50 years? Why don't we just fix a curriculum, force students to be in school from 7 o'clock in the morning to 4 o'clock in the afternoon, have them sit for standardized exams and graduate? It's so much easier to simply follow what we've been doing for all these years. And my answer is because of VUCA and because of the rapid change of technology, we can't do that anymore. The education system was designed to produce workers to work in the factory. As long as they could read the instructions on the procedure, as long as they could count up to a certain level, and they can move the handles of the machine, that's enough. And the education system of the last 50 years was designed to produce workers for industry. It's not the same anymore. Robots, AI, they're all taking over jobs. And if we don't adapt and reinvent our businesses from what 99% would say, this is the way to do business, we would never succeed. Grab in Indonesia, Gojek in Indonesia. One of the biggest transport taxi service owns no taxis. Agoda.web.id. Biggest online travel agent in terms of hotels rooms in Indonesia. How many hotel rooms do they own? Zero. That's because someone at some point of time said, no, there is a better way of doing this. This is the way it's always been done, but it's not necessarily the best way. So if you breed this culture where every single one of your worker is empowered to say, isn't there a better way to do this? That is where you now build an organization which gets better through time. And the lesson to remember is that you must be prepared to reinvent yourself. If you just stick to what you've been doing the traditional way, think about the next time you want to do it, think about Olivetti, typewriters, biggest typewriter people. Think about Nokia. 90% or 80% of the world market was Nokia's market, but they refused to build smartphones and touch screens. Where do you own a Nokia now? Think about all these companies which did not want to update, to reinvent themselves, because they said, oh, we're a photography company, we are Kodak, we produce cameras. Now this electronic camera thing is gonna be a nice fad. Let's not go there. We're just going to keep doing photography. Where is Kodak today? One of the biggest companies in America. Think about it. You need to be prepared to reinvent yourself. And why? Because there is always a better way to do something. Let me get out of the way for a minute so you can see the slide. There is always a better way to do something. When you think you've got it right and this is the way something is done, trust me, in the infinite game, there will be another player who will come and do something like you and may even do it better. So what you need to do is to get better all the time. Never sit on your laurels and say, oh, we're the best. Always get better and better. Okay. I have no doubt that within 3 years, lots of schools in Bandung or maybe Indonesia will do modular system. Okay. It's just the first pioneer is always you set the course for it. Let's go to number 5 because I'm looking at my time. Number 5 is to be brave and to teach your people to be brave, because change requires you to make decisions. Now, the worst thing you can ever have, this is what I always feel, the worst thing you can ever have is a leader who won't make a decision. Yes, there are times when it's more appropriate to say, I will decide now. Let me get more information and I will decide later. Or you could say, let's see how it develops first, and then we will then make a decision once we see how this is developing. I'm not talking about those situations. I'm talking about situations where leaders refuse to make any decision because they fear that they are making the wrong decision. There is nothing worse than making a bad decision except a leader who refuses to make any decision, just paralyzed by fear. My advice for every leader here is to be brave. Except for those situations where you don't need to make a decision today, make a decision, because people are looking up to you as the leader before they can move as well, before they can make their own decisions. Be brave and teach your people to be brave. Now, how do we teach our people to be brave? Very simple. Allow them sometimes to make manageable mistakes. Allow your people to make manageable mistakes. If they're going to make a mistake that is small and controllable. And when and if they make a mistake, don't judge. What you need to do is investigate and use every failure as a reason or a learning experience for each and every one of your subordinates. The worst thing you can do is the first time you say, oh, this is wrong, this is really bad, da 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 da, this is your punishment. Trust me, the second time, no one will make a decision anymore. Your entire organization will slowly and very clearly grind to a halt. Seperti ada rem. Nothing will move forward anymore because everyone is really, really afraid of making any mistakes. Be brave and teach your people to be brave. Let them, within the boundaries of certain parameters, make some decision. Be brave, for example, to tell you what problems they are at home. We have one teacher who couldn't come on time. He was late every day, not a lot late, very little late, like 15 minutes every day. We're supposed to be there at 7 and come at 7:15, 7:20. And for a long time, the leader was just scolding him. Oh, you need to come on time. You need to come on time. You need to come on time. And I said, I heard this many times, and I sat down with this teacher and I said, you're causing a bit of problem. So why are you late? What's happening? And this teacher really gave me a long and very compelling story. He gave me a reason why he was late. Not because he was lazy. This guy was up at 4 o'clock in the morning because he had other things that he needed to do. And I listened to him and we sat down and I said, okay, how about you try this, try that, try this, try that. And lo and behold, he stopped coming late. All he needed was to speak to us as his leader to say that he had a problem at home or he had some other thing that he needed to do. And you want to be able to teach and allow your subordinates to enjoy that culture in your school or your business. You want them to be brave to speak up. Again, I've heard many criticisms that in Indonesia it is very challenging. But my answer to you is that it is initially a problem, but when people realize that the organizational culture allows them to be honest, to make mistakes, that is where your people become more brave, and simple problems like being late all the time or doing things late, not filing reports, these are all things that are easily cleared up once you teach your people to be brave and to communicate their problems.
Sampai kita ketemu lagi minggu depan di 1 jam bersama LTI.